Hello, gracefully chosen community, and welcome to Foster My Stories, the achievement focused podcast for foster care, adoption, orphan, inclusive of the underserved communities. I'm your host, Shalina Michelle Tate. And on today's cast episode, I'm super excited for you to get to know my featured special guest for September, Ms. Barbara Davis, a youth edutainment performer and foster parent wanting to create safe, creative environments for families and youth to thrive. How are you doing, Miss Barbara?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be a part of this with you, Shalina, and I'm so excited to know that this beautiful podcast can help more youth in the future and that we'll be able to have loving homes for as many young people as possible.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I'm very grateful to have you here on the podcast and taking time out of your day to be on here. I'm super excited for the listeners to get to know who you are and what you do. But before we get into the dynamics of the little live show, can you please provide a snippet of how your background allowed you to positively grow into edutainment for families and youth?
Well, it's kind of a fun story. When I was a little girl, I was one of those children that would always be in the backyard dancing around and singing to myself. And that's actually how I entertained myself. And
Yeah.
even if I had a problem or something was going on with me, I would spend time in front of a mirror and I would create a character that would talk to me and be my friend. So when I got older, I thought, this might help other children. I became a performing artist for children and I went into the schools. And at the schools, the children's laughter and their applause was so amazing, but something that I never expected happened at the end of each show. A young child would come up to me and ask if they could talk to me. And I met so many young children that were having really difficult lives. What I found out was that the music and the comedy and the kindness relaxed them enough that they felt they could open up to me and have a friend. And that's why I decided to become a foster parent.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, I'm going to get into the dynamics of you being a foster parent as well. I'm so grateful to hear that. That definitely means that, just you bringing light into those situations allowed the youth to open up and connect with you, even though you were there to kind of like educate them and teach them. They had a connection because they knew you were somebody safe. They knew that you definitely had their best interests and they knew that you brought really life and light to their situations. And I appreciate you for sharing that with me. Could you tell listeners what helped you attribute your expertise dealing with the performing arts and the little live show to include foster and adoptive communities as it relates to the theatrical?
Well, because I love children, to be honest with you, with every ounce of my being, and young teens, and even young people when they go into adulthood, if I've had a connection with them, I found it was really important to find a way to help them express their emotions.
Yeah.
And, when I did a lighthearted show and I had an audience at a school, that was one thing. But when the children that would come up to me later opened up to me, I realized if I could teach them how to put expression into their words, how to create stories, how to possibly draw out what they were feeling, whatever art form would help them, I realized that I could help them to heal.
Yeah.
And, because I was so dedicated to my work, I made sure I went into schools where there was actually a lot of poverty
Yeah.
and young people who were struggling. And I decided, why not just open my home too? And
Yeah.
so I would go to the shows during the day, and a lot of the kids that lived with me, they loved to tag along and hop up on that stage. I had one little one, she loved to go with me to the TV station I was doing some work for because she'd have an opportunity to be on camera.
Yeah.
Anyway, that, I'm just trying to make it fun for you too while I'm talking about this, but it was such a healing tool, and it was magnificent to see them relax
Yeah.
while feeling better instead of feeling pain.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm just imagining right now those little kids coming up to you, wanting to talk and engage and really feeling connected, um, and feeling that they have somebody who would listen to them. And I imagine just the time that you spent there engaging them in the activities and making them feel loved and welcome. Um, really increased those opportunities as well. When how did you get to start really doing your shows and progressing this into the little live show? How did that come about?
Well, I have a little bit of an interesting childhood of my own, although I was never in foster care.
Yeah.
But I actually was a runaway as a young woman. And after I finally was old enough that I realized it was important that I have a more secure life, I
Yeah.
thought, well, what can I do with my life? And I gave myself a choice. I said, you could do something that would bring in a fair amount of income because I love people. And so I was pretty good with sales. Or you could do something that at the end of the day, you feel really good about yourself. So I sat down and I said a prayer and I asked God to help me find a path to do something that could make the world a better place.
Yeah.
And I listened deeply to myself
Yeah.
after that prayer. And I realized, just like that little girl who loved to perform before I ever grew up, that would dance in the backyard, that was my purpose, that I could use that gift as a way to open the door to young people to feel better. And in my life, it actually had the same purpose. When I
Yeah.
became a performing artist and I developed a program to help traumatized youth, the beauty of it is I had had my own experiences that were very difficult, and performing had helped me. So
Yes.
I was able to bring that to them and find purpose in life that had meaning. And that's I think that's what's missing for a lot of people. And it's something that I know, Shalina, you have found. You
Yes.
have found your purpose, and
Oh,
you're turning struggle into something positive for others. And that's the same thing I wanted to do, bring a
oh.
little sunshine on that storm.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And yes, I'm grateful to now be able to take the strides with you as well and the other leaders and professionals that we know that desire to make a change for our environments and the families and the youth we want to serve. And I definitely agree with you, especially the performing arts, how that does make a great difference in the lives of children if given a chance. I know there were talks at one point of taking the arts out of the schools, and I understand the push for education, being the central focus, but the kids also need a positive outlet in order to be more balanced and have a sense of belonging. There's nothing wrong with education, but they also need a positive outlet, especially for expression and development and growth. And without even being a kid or a student there in your program, I feel like I can connect to those kids who were in your program and they're on stage. A year or so ago, I had the opportunity to help out at a Columbia Children's Theater. So I know the excitement of just being around the youth and them, loving to try on the costumes and rehearse the lines and performing for their families and friends. But so I thank you, Miss Barbara, for just the love that I could just tell you have for not only the youth, but for their families and just for that to be a connection for development. So I just appreciate you just kind of explaining, how that connects better for those families and those youth. Um, and here's what you kind of touched on it earlier, but now I want to ask, how has the positive connections with families and youth allowed you to really engage those tactics in being a foster parent?
Well, I have to tell you, when I first became a foster parent, I learned very quickly that the anger that some young children were experiencing
Yeah.
was so strong that I had to do something. And I wanted to share a story with you, Shalina.
Yes.
When I was a foster parent, I also got to work for Child Protective Services under a grant that I developed. Unfortunately, what did happen is the artists were taken out of the schools, and I was replaced, as many other artists in the schools, with computers.
Mm.
Well, I decided to write a grant, and
Okay.
I was working as a foster mom for Child Protective Services, and I had a young woman. She was brought to me, and she was very, very sad. And she was staying in her room a lot at the foster home where she was at. And unfortunately, she had witnessed her own family member throwing her brother against a wall,
Mm.
and the young man was paralyzed.
Oh my goodness.
And she witnessed all of this.
Yeah.
So I thought, how am I going to help her?
Yeah.
And then I realized that she was very quiet. So why not start out with a creative writing? And a lot of the children in my care, instead of like when I would discipline them, getting real firm, I would like
Yeah.
do it through creative writing. And
Yeah.
so I had her write a story with me about a bird and a storm. And children, many times, they like metaphors.
Yeah.
They express themselves through a character or through an object or something that in their imagination.
Yeah.
So this little bird became her brother, and she
Mm.
was able to describe what it was like for what she saw when her brother was hurt
Oh no.
by using the little bird.
Yeah.
And then it took me about 3 sessions. And then I asked her to stand up and speak with expression and read the story out loud about the bird in the storm. And she did. It took me a while to teach her how to put more and more emotion into her words. But as she was learning this, as she was reading the story out loud, Shalina, I know you know what was happening. It was helping to heal what she was holding inside that she had seen that she didn't feel safe talking to anybody about.
Yeah.
It is really my hope and aspiration that she eventually quit hiding in her room in the foster home she was in and came out
Yeah.
and learned how to be in the world and be around people. But I've used that with different children that have been in my care. And also, I like to use, as a foster parent, let's say I have a really quiet child, but I notice they can draw.
Yeah.
Well, I had one little one. This is a true story. She would sit and just stare a lot, but I noticed her drawing.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to get her to do things. So instead, what I did is I just had her do a whole cartoon from the beginning of the day to what she needed to do to get ready for the day and
Yeah.
just draw it all out. And
Yeah.
then I would take her to kindergarten. And
Aw.
sure enough, it worked. Just
Oh.
using fun art. I personally don't draw that well, but I could tell she could. And the little one had been born 1 pound, 16 ounces.
Oh wow.
She had survived.
Yeah.
And I met her when she was older. And so there was good reason why parts of her development was slow. But by giving her the arts, this is what occurred. And oh, I loved it when she came home one time with she got an award at school from the kindergarten teacher saying she was the one child in the class who had changed and improved the most.
Oh.
But
Thank you.
it's just fun. I mean,
Yeah.
the hard thing is that when people take in these children, it's very, very important to know
Yeah.
that you've got to put yourself in that child's
Yes.
shoes.
Yes.
See if you can feel and empathize with what's really going on here.
Yeah.
Because when you go to direct them and guide them and discipline them, you got to help them find a foundation within themselves that's comfortable. And the beauty of it is if you use the arts and also other things too, you know, Shalina, I'm very big into sports when it comes to swimming. Like every child that lives here went swimming every day because it released
It
their
does.
emotions.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
anything you can find that will connect with them in a more relaxing, upbeat way, eventually, if you are patient, and this is something real important for foster parents to know, you want to take time. This
Yes.
little one did not become like they are
Yeah.
overnight.
Yeah.
So it's going to take time. And just remind yourself to be patient. It's kind of funny. My first little whatever, I thought I had always heard count to 10 before you react as a parent. I remember standing in my apartment. I was only in my 20s, and I said, I think you better count to 100, Barbara.
Uh, oh, thank
But
you. Yeah.
anyway, I'm kind of going on and on, but I will tell you that it's been an effective tool, and it's been able to build a connection into their lives even as adults.
Yeah.
So, and some of the parents too, I'm really always grateful that some of the parents have stayed in touch. I have one woman, I call her my sister, and she actually was a heroin addict,
Yeah.
and I stayed in her life, and she straightened up, and I stayed
Oh,
in the lives of all of her children.
yeah.
And you know, I've taken some collect calls from prison,
Yeah.
and from some of her children, and I've stuck with them,
Yeah.
and they're all doing pretty well, as good as can be expected. But it's important to see if you can find a connection so that there can be growth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Miss Barbara, thank you for sharing the gift of, what you just shared. You just reiterated just the care, the love, the empathy, the patience that it takes to be able to see the giftings in the youth and also connect with their families as well, because life happens and real situations happen. And unfortunately, some situations that don't sound too good, but happens, and they still need support and empathy. And I believe even those calls from prison is because they knew they had someone they can genuinely talk to and trust. And at the end of the day, I think that's what helps in the healing process, not more so really reminding them of all the ways they messed up and really the statistics behind that, but more so letting them know that, hey, this thing happened, but I'm here to support you and you're going to be okay. So I feel that they connected with you because they knew you were coming from a genuine place of care. I feel like it's educators like yourself who youth remember the most. You can have all the teachers growing up, but you'll always remember those educators you felt take the most time, really listened and empathized. And I really believe you are definitely that one. And so thank you so much for sharing, especially the your remarkable story about the youth with the little bird. And although that story was kind of unfortunate with her
Yeah.
brother, she was able to start a healing process by including just your nudge of art and expression. And so if there's any educators out there in schools or leaders listening who are around youth on a regular basis, I definitely encourage you to continue to like incorporate art. The arts are so important in the schools, in the classrooms. It may not necessarily be, theatrical. It may be music or drawing. It may, like Miss Barbara said, be athleticism. But the important thing, what she was noting, is that she paid attention that these kids had a gift, and our jobs as leaders and educators and mentors is to help them find the gift. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really appreciated that story. Also, you have so much wisdom, Ms. Barbara, and I know you had just going to your website and seeing the youth just having a blast on there. And I'm like, man, I knew Miss Barber when I was coming up. I know they had a blast just being around you and just
Oh
looking at the
gosh.
art. um, well, I know, speaking of your website, Little Live Show, the impact that it has. Can you tell listeners about your website and what all services that you
Sure.
do?
Well, Shalina, I have an ebook I wrote called The Children I Have Loved.
Yeah.
And that's a really helpful tool for people who are considering becoming a foster parent. And here in California, I know they're calling them resource families now.
Okay.
And it's a book full of inspiration, but also truth.
Okay.
I think it's very important that people know what they're coming into because
Yeah.
that's essential. A lot of people have a big dream. Oh, I'm going to get involved. I'm going to save a child, but they need to understand what it's about. So the
Yeah.
ebook is truthful. I also have some music recordings for children.
Mm.
Right now on the website, we're updating some of that, but if people are interested, they can contact me. I have one recording I really love called The Treasure of Time.
Yeah.
And I have another one called The Little Character That's Me. And I use comedy and music and storytelling to teach lessons. The
Yeah.
Treasure of Time is a parenting tape. It's all about how we spend time together matters and makes a difference. And I also have produced a number of radio and television ads.
Yeah.
So if people need help with recruitment, I have 2 articles I've written. I am a type 1 diabetic. I'm pretty concerned about children with diabetes in care. So I have an article that I'm happy to share that is recruiting more people to help children with that health condition. And
Yeah.
I also have another more generic article people can access from me. And I'm more than happy to share this. I've been doing all I can in media and publishing. And that's actually why I'm here today,
Yeah.
is because I feel like, I'm going to be 70 in November. Oh
Oh,
no, I'm
congratulations.
trying to stay young forever, but I am going to be 70. And so I'm trying to make sure in this life, like I said earlier, purpose,
Yeah.
do as much as I can. And I love doing trainings. I have a strong background in educating social workers, psychologists, resource parents, foster parents, and I like working directly with the youth.
Yes.
So I can do a Zoom class or in person, and I'm hoping to gain more exposure nationally as a speaker
Yes.
because, Shalina, in this life, I just want to do as much as I can to
Yes.
know that my words in some way made a life for someone else better. And
Yes.
that's really just about all the richness I need to know I've accomplished that. So hopefully, Shalina, our podcast here can reach more people and they can feel free to contact me. I can create original material for people too. If they have a specific need and they need
Yeah.
a recruitment ad or something to help them in their area,
Yeah.
we can talk about that. I want to make sure you know too, I never say the names of any youth in my care, and I
Yes.
have permissions to talk about some of the youth that I have talked to you about, but out of respect and love and honoring them, I
Yes.
never discuss names. So I
Of
want to make
course.
sure you know that. And even in my writings, I create fictional names.
Yes.
So we protect the stories of all of you. But Shalina, it's great that you're bringing out stories because so many people need to become aware of the
Yeah.
problem and walk into this with open mind and insight. So thank you.
No, thank you. And I appreciate just you sharing that. And I'm excited to be able to promote your services to a broader audience, for them to connect with you for services. And I'm making a petition now. If you are a listener and you may be an investor or a freelancer or somebody in your community, you're wanting to just connect with Ms. Davis on what she does. as an edutainer or on the professional business side or the counsel side, please, please, please get in contact with her. I'm going to promote her services. I'm making a website now. So as soon as that is done, I want y'all to hop on there and support, support, support. And you already have given so many words of wisdom, golden nuggets, but I do want to ask you before we go, what advice would you like listeners to take with them as it relates to life or connecting with families?
Well, let me think for a moment on that. Words of wisdom from the top of my head at the last moment. This is a good question, Shalina.
Thank you.
I think if I could give words of wisdom to people,
Yeah.
we see so much emphasis on big degrees and people being thought of as somebody important because of their education. I'm not saying that education isn't important. It is, and you can
Yeah.
learn a lot. But there's a different kind of teacher that
Yeah.
I deeply believe in. And I'm going to dedicate these thoughts to a beautiful woman named Gloria. She passed last week, and she was one of my most incredible teachers. She was actually a woman that came into my home, and she was helping my mother to keep the house clean.
Yeah.
She was the angel in our house. She would sit with me at her lunch break, and she would listen. And she would always listen deeply from her heart. I stayed in her life throughout her whole adulthood, from a little girl all the way into her 80s. I truly believe she is royalty.
Yeah.
And what I think is important is that we give credibility
Yeah.
in our life to people who learn from life.
Yeah.
I learned the wisdom of how to help young women that are victimized from my own life experience.
Yeah.
I gained a blessing from my hardship. And these kinds of teachers are important. And I would like to see all of us be able to listen to your soul, listen to your heart. Don't be afraid to speak out.
Yes.
Speak from that part of your being and let your hardship be a gift for another. And if you need help with healing, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes we all have hard days and memories, but
Yeah.
stick to that gift within you
Yeah.
to have life leadership. And you know what I'm talking about, Shalina?
Yeah.
These are the real teachers. I mean,
Yeah.
I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I'm just going to say something. Like when I was living as a runaway,
Yeah.
a family took me in. They were a Filipino family. We lived in a little tiny shack. It was very small, not even built like a house. And in the backyard, the 90-year-old grandpa had a garden, and I was in charge of taking care of this beautiful little baby so I could have a bed to sleep in
Yeah.
and food. That woman who brought me into that home, she's royalty.
Yeah.
These are the kind of people that our society really needs to bring more attention to.
Yes.
They are life teachers.
Yes. Thank
I,
you.
I think
Thank
I
you.
went off on a little bit of a tangent
No,
there, Shalina.
no,
Now you see why I work with kids. Kids are like,
no,
we can
that
just go on and on.
no, that was golden, golden words of wisdom. I was soaking it in like a sponge. I really appreciate it because as you were describing, just really that the compassion of that leader, that mother figure, that mentor. I was imagining, I was right there with you, imagining just your connection, just the friendship, just the respect. And I agree with you. It's the those who have, once again, like you said, there's nothing wrong with education. We do value education, but like yourself, as I have learned along the way, I kind of gravitate more to those who have like real life experiences or that who have gone through something and how they have really mustered what they've gone through, and then now they're over here helping others, and I feel like I gravitate there. And once again, if you're listening to this podcast, once again, we value education, but we also highly value experience. And that's what these youth need, and that's what families need, and that's what we need as each other coming together in experience. Miss Barbara, I really appreciate you just taking time out of your day, and just everything you've said today. It's just been so delightful, so peaceful. You mentioned earlier about the sports and just, taking your kids to the pool. I wish I was one of those kids. The water is so relaxing. If anybody's gone swimming before or learning to swim, if you could just do a back float, you could just lay there all day.
You know what,
And
Shalina? Not a lot of people know this, but that's how I pray.
yeah,
I
oh
lay on my
yeah.
back and I close my eyes and I say a prayer and I
Mhm.
ask God to fill my being with health and
Yeah,
happiness. And I
yeah,
never judge when it comes to religion.
yeah,
I'm kind of an upbeat person
yeah,
who has spirituality in my life, but I don't judge.
yeah,
We all
yeah,
have our own ways that we find
yeah,
our highest self and our happiest parts of who we are. But you're right. And I'm really
yeah.
proud of you.
Oh,
Everything you're doing. It's so great, Shalina.
thank you. Thank you. I'm very humbled to hear that. And, you know, people like you, your leaders like you, help me progress in just the effort of wanting to just do more. So I appreciate you. I appreciate just, your history and just the strides you've made already with the youth you've helped. But I know more is coming. And I'm petitioning listeners, especially freelancers, if you're out there. Miss Barbara has a dynamic website. We spoke on it briefly earlier, littleliveshow.com. But she's wanting. I'm imagining she's wanting to kind of take those strides even more to more
Yeah.
places, and really need the partnerships, the best partnerships, and maybe the best investors, and maybe the best freelancers that can help her kind of progress it forward from the time that it originated. Um, Without going into too much detail, the vision's bigger, and we need supporters that's going to help her progress that vision. And if that sounds like you, I am petitioning that you reach out here for this podcast, that you connect to Miss Barbara. I'm going to put something on the website to kind of help those balls roll. And I'm looking forward to see how this grows, and in order to be a better and bigger support. Well, Miss Barbara, thank you so much for taking your time today on Foster My Stories. You are a light, and I've gotten so much joy just listening to your words of wisdom and your stories. I was imagining them. I was imagining the youth and the stage and the costumes, and I'm excited for the progression of what you're going to be doing. And listeners, you've listened to this podcast today, and so what I petition to you is to just tune in and share this information with others. If you've enjoyed this content today, like I feel that you will, please share with as many people as you know, any educators, any change makers or investors or freelancers that want to get involved in helping Miss Barbara carry forth the vision. Please connect. And also, if your upbringing, community service, or job connects you to the foster adoption or from the underserved community, I would love to have you on the podcast as well. You can send over a request over into the inbox of this podcast or on Facebook page um, at fostermystories.com. And stay tuned. The full website is in development right now. And on that website, Miss Davis will be on there. Her content and her projects will be highlighted for you to support. And as it's being prepared to launch, please make sure to tune in on the pre-advertised dates and times for the pre-stream and live stream of the Pod Live Facebook page, or catch pre-recorded audio uploads via Red Circle Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Audible and Music, Radio Public, Google Podcasts, or the Foster My Stories Facebook page. Today, Ms. Davis provided insight to create the love and support to change the atmosphere for others, even if our past hasn't always provided the support for ourselves. Once again, thank you, Ms. Davis, for being here today on Foster My Stories. And listeners, Feel free to share this content with someone you know. And remember, as always, being fostered, adopted, orphaned, or underserved simply means you're gracefully chosen. Thank you so much, listeners, for your time. Miss Davis, thank you so much for your being here today. Have a
And
dynamic rest of your day. You're welcome.
Shalina,
Thank you.
I just wanted to tell you something real quick before you go.
Yeah.
I couldn't quit smiling the whole time I was here
Oh,
with you.
I couldn't,
Thank
me
you.
neither. No worries, me neither.
Thank
I
you.
was just soaking everything in and just know that I'm beaming because I know the heart you have for the youth, the families, and the love and compassion you have, the wanting to make the changes. And so that's why I want to rally behind the support that you need to continue progressing that vision forward. And so I'm on board with hopefully helping them make that a bigger, bigger, bigger reality. Yes. Um, oh, one more thing I meant to ask you. Do you have any upcoming projects that you're working
I
on?
do. Yeah.
Okay, what are you working on? Would you
Well, I
share?
love working with the teens, and I'm teaching them how to use their voice to create content that is meaningful and
Yeah,
can help others.
yeah,
And, I'm not a person who's on the computer a lot,
yeah.
but I know that the youth, they are. So I want them to learn, how do we create messages that will make a difference? And also,
Oh,
I'm creating some trainings with a wonderful new co-presenter, Wanda Jacobs. I know you interviewed
yay,
her.
Wanda.
Oh my goodness, we have a training we did together called The Future is Bright, which is
Yeah,
available if people want access to that. But we
yes.
also are working on a new one, and I'm
Yay.
going to keep it secret the minute
Okay, no worries.
until we're done. But wait till you see it, Shalina. We're
Yeah,
combining humor,
yeah.
fun graphics,
Oh,
and people that have deep stories
yeah.
have had a challenge but have learned how to use humor and inspiration
Oh,
to move past it so their
yeah.
daily lives can be good. And we'll be looking actually for some foster youth, uh,
Yeah,
foster parents,
yeah,
and we're going to choose a very small group,
yeah.
but we're on the look
Uh,
for funny,
yes.
kind, compassionate people who face life with love and fire.
Yes, well, I'm excited just to hear the snippet of that. I imagine that's going to pick up like wildfire because that's going to allow that artistic expression and development and the support that these youth need. So I'm excited for just that snippet that you gave, and I'm looking forward to helping also promote that as it progresses along. So thank you so much for and yay, Wanda.
I love Wanda. What the beauty of us being together. I currently am only doing respite care, and I
Yeah.
miss every day. I
Oh,
miss having children or teens at my home. And Wanda came into my life, and she had grown up in foster care.
yeah,
And it's such a great match because
yeah.
I tell her all the time, I said, even though you never came into my home as a placement, Wanda, I want you to know that you feel like somebody who is in my home, in my life.
Oh,
And you and I, we have a foster parent and a former youth working together.
yeah.
It's
Oh my goodness.
such a good team. It's
A
great.
dynamic team, a dynamic
Yeah.
team. Listeners, be on the lookout for this content and connect to this content very soon. Miss Davis, thank you for being
You're
here. And
welcome.
you're
All right,
welcome.
Shalina, I will see
All right.
you. Have a beautiful
Bye.
day.
Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.